Welcome, everyone, to the Self Improvement Podcast, where we talk about personal development principles to assist you as a high school student or even as a freshman in college. And today we have a special guest and, of course, co-host Dalton Cox. How you doing, Dalton?
Doing good, Ian. Glad to be here.
And welcome, Alexis.
Hi, thank you. It's great to be here.
Likewise. All right. So I guess we could get started by kind of knowing more about you as a teacher in terms of like education. Like, why do you do what you do, and what did you have to do and teach yourself and learn to be a teacher?
Yeah. So I'll say this. If you were to have asked my high school self if I would ever be a teacher, I would have laughed at you. This was certainly not my 10-year plan. I went to a technical high school in Massachusetts and I went for TV and radio communications. And so the plan was I was going to be a TV producer somewhere. And then somewhere in my senior year, I kind of got disillusioned with it. I produced a local public access TV show every day. And I didn't like the type of person I felt like I needed to be to get things done. And of course, now looking back, I just didn't know how to be a leader. But I felt like it just wasn't who I wanted to be. I felt like I needed to boss people around and tell people what to do constantly. And I didn't like that part of me. And so I took a gap year and I worked for a nonprofit in Louisiana called City Year. And in doing that, I worked in a fourth grade classroom in East Baton Rouge Parish. And I fell in love with my work. I remember I came home one day and it was just like it was like a light bulb moment. Like, oh my gosh, I think this is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. Being able to connect with young people and help them figure things out was just really rewarding. So after I did that for a year, and then I moved back up north, and I moved into my grandmother's house in New Hampshire. And so I did 2 years at a community college because I knew being a teacher was never going to make me a ton of money. And then I did 2 years at a state school. And I finished my bachelor's, and I decided I wanted to do something different. I finished my bachelor's degree in not in May like most students do, but in December. And so I had a 6 months before I could be hired as the teacher in the States. And so I figured, why not apply overseas? And so it was kind of a rash decision to move to Thailand. I applied on a Thursday, had my interview on Super Bowl Sunday, and booked my flight on a Tuesday. And it was just like, here we go, and it was fun. It was fun to make that choice and be able to make that choice. And so I did that for a year and then moved back to the States and got my job where I am now.
Awesome. Yeah, so I guess part of your education journey has taught you a lot about yourself, because reading about how to become a TV producer is like different than actually doing it. And then realizing that there are other components like the leadership component you were talking about.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
Dalton is particularly passionate about leadership. But the way you described it to me kind of stood out because it was different than the way he described it to me. And I found that pretty interesting. Like, Dalton, do you have any comments about that?
When you said you weren't a good enough leader, what do you think that meant?
Yeah, so I think now, right, looking back and also coaching young people into being better leaders in our school community, I think one of the biggest issues I had was I didn't know how to delegate tasks, and I took things really personally. So I think, for instance, if someone was working on a news story and they didn't follow through, I took it personally, and that wasn't about me, but I would take it personally, and I would hold on to it and hold on to that frustration. And it just didn't sit well with me. I think certainly now leadership looks a lot different as I've gotten older, and as I've had more experience. And I would like to think, I like the word facilitator, I think, rather than leader. And I think I like that word because it kind of puts me on equal footing with everyone. I don't know that I necessarily am the type of person to gravitate towards that role of leader, traditionally anyways.
Mhm. It's very interesting. Like for me, in my business, when I am enrolling someone new, I think of leadership because I'm helping them clarify what they want and what they need to do. And so in my case, like the word I like to use, like your word is facilitator. Like you think of yourself as a facilitator. For me, I look at myself as an advisor, like
Mm-hmm.
someone that others seek for advice, like in my specific industry. And it also takes off this like perceived pressure in a sense, like, oh, I gotta lead them, I gotta tell them this, that. But no, you're just advising someone or you're facilitating a specific activity or subject. And I think that's really helpful. It's a helpful mindset.
I
Yeah.
think people have. Go ahead, Alexis.
Oh, I was just going to say it's similar to like the idea of coaching. You know, I think all of these words are synonyms. They're relatively interchangeable.
I like that. Yeah, it's true.
I think the misconception that I commonly see with leadership is you bossing around people and telling them what to do. And that's not what leadership really is. Leadership is a lot of things. One of the things you talked about, Alexis, is that you get worked up about something, you get too attached to it. And so there's this thing in leadership called detachment. To detach from your emotions, to detach from the task at hand so you can see the overall picture, which also helps with decentralized command, which you call delegating tasks, which is a big part of leadership. So you can have that up and above perspective. And another thing about leadership that a lot of people don't realize is you want your subordinates to take ownership of the tasks that they need to do. And in order to do that, you have to let them have ownership and control. So, yeah.
Ownership. So
It
like, go
It
ahead.
sounds like good teaching, right? It sounds like giving people autonomy and giving them a say over what they do. And I think as a young person, I just didn't have an understanding of that.
Mhm.
Certainly as I've gotten older, I see that now. But Dalton, the way you just described leadership just sounded like good teaching tactics, you know?
For sure.
Yeah. And like in the business world, being a good leader, so to speak, is also like ethical. Like you're not forcing people, but you're leading them. You're clarifying, you're advising. So it's just something that is super easy to transfer into different domains of life. Is like helping people take ownership for their life, for their self-improvement, for their goals. Like they have to own their goals. Like if someone doesn't want to be successful, I can't help them.
Yeah,
If a
it's
student, yeah.
funny that you mentioned the goals part, because Ian and we have a mastermind where we keep each other accountable for the goals that we have. And when you talk about having ownership for your goals, you can have somebody holding you accountable all you want, though those goals aren't going to be accomplished unless you put in the work to do them, and unless you decide that that's what you're going to pursue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a question popped up in my head. Like, since we're talking about leadership, that's kind of like one of the things that you have to coach your students on, right? Like, if a student is watching this right now, or someone just in high school in general, and they're having trouble understanding why they need to take ownership for their learning, like their future, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that we are the choices we make every day. And it's important to have something to work towards and something to look forward to. And so if you can get a vision of where you want to be in the next even 3 months, right? Like look past right now. Where do you want to be? It's going to help you to get to where you need to go, I suppose. So for instance, so I teach writing, and after every paper or every small paragraph, even right now, I've been having the kids give themselves feedback on how they can grow as a writer. And so, this week, maybe one of their issues was that they didn't authorize. So they used evidence in a text and they didn't say where that evidence came from. And so next week or this week, they wrote that like, next time I want to make sure I use authorization. And so then next week they have their paper and they write their paper and we look back and I say, okay, did you use authorization? And so set those small goals too, I think, because when you reach small goals, it feels good,
Mhm.
and it feels like you are growing and you are achieving. Even if it's not this big, huge goal. And I think I do that in weightlifting too. I set small goals, and then when I reach them, I set another small goal and go from there. I think maybe that answers your question.
It felt right. Yeah, like you mentioned vision. Like if they don't have vision, there's no deeper reason for why they gotta hit these like incremental smaller goals. And I think that stands true in many ways, especially like in the mastermind that we mentioned. Like when the first time we set goals, we asked the question, like, okay, you have these smaller weekly goals. Where's this going to lead you to? Where do you want to end up? Like my vision for myself is different than Dalton's, but we help each other stay reminded of what we really want. Like even for this podcast, we asked ourselves, like, why do we want to do this? And a major part of it was that to help people, just to help people that are in high school, just kind of like the younger generation, because I consider myself to be different, like in my school, because I'm into this personal development stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not the norm. And I feel like if we can shift the culture in that way and make developing yourself something normal and cool,
Yeah.
then that's something huge. Like that's real impact to me. And that's our like 10-year vision, at least, is to keep sharing these ideas.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's hard for for young people to see a future, like what happens after high school, right? And I think in our culture, it's you either go to college or you join a trade. And if you're not going to college, and you don't, and let's say you choose to stay in town and you're not really sure what you're going to do, that's seen as a negative thing. And I think so many young people kind of get stuck in this, like, what do I do? Because they don't have that vision and they're not taught how to see that vision, because it's kind of an abstract skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder how this could look in a classroom environment.
I feel like what you mentioned previously about thinking about it as coaching, like you're coaching these students, I think that's a very solid way to, I guess, help students visualize what they want a little bit more.
It's really good to ask questions and try to poke them in that direction indirectly, I would say. So, like, what are your interests? What do you like to do? Why do you like to do that? And that's something I've seen a lot, especially, people around my sister's age and some high school seniors that I know, is that they don't know what they want to do in their future. And what I would recommend is that they explore their interests. And if you don't know what you're interested in, then just explore new careers, new hobbies, and things like that until you find something that you're passionate about, and you can start making those long-term goals or even short-term goals to work towards that passion.
Yeah. Yeah, something I've been noticing a lot is I feel like young people don't have a lot of passions or hobbies or things they really deeply care about. And certainly that's not always the case, but when we have these conversations in my classroom, I feel like maybe a third of them don't have hobbies or things that they like. And thinking back to myself as a young person, I don't know that I had those things either. And it wasn't until I became an adult that I started, dipping my toes into different, hobbies, and I found different interests, because I think as a young person, if you're not exposed to these things, and I don't think I was, you don't know what your interests are. So I guess that's why it's so important to have join extracurricular activities and put yourself out there as a young person, so you can have these different lived experiences and learn what things you like and things you don't like.
I agree with that. Experience is what's lacking. And like, even with what I'm doing, I'm still building my experience, but I'm still able to do it.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing if I hadn't like tried different domains. Like I went and studied accounting for a little bit, dentistry, EMT. Let's see what else. Biology. Like I looked at different careers in science. I used to draw, but I stopped because I didn't enjoy it as much. And then, I stumbled across music. I played the guitar. I still do. It's my main instrument. And then I came across producing. Oh, wow, I can produce. And I made some cool music. But then I was like, well, how is that going to work if no one hears it? Or if there are no fans like buying different products from the art, relating to the art? Then I was like, okay, sales and marketing, let's go into that. And boom, like, wow, I'm super passionate about that. Like how do we create attention? How do we create like a cult following almost? You could say, how do we create like an influencer, and how can we market them? Like, to me, that was interesting. And that's what I'm studying, and that's what I help with.
That's great. I also find it so fascinating, how we get to where we end up, right? So you dipped your toe in all of these different things, and maybe you still have interest in some of them, but it's not your true passion. And I think that's what makes humans interesting, is all of these different parts of ourselves, and all of our niche little interests and our hobbies. And I think that's great.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. I also had like a thought yesterday about passion versus like vision versus what you want to do, like what really matters at the end of the day. And as I was having more conversations with people in my industry and then outside my industry, I started thinking to myself, like, passion is overrated. Like, passion isn't everything, which sounds contradictory because everyone tells you to follow your passion. And that the aha moment I had yesterday was that vision is more important than passion.
I think passion can fade in time. And I think that with vision, you're able to renew that passion.
Mm-hmm.
And so passion waxes and wanes, right? But I think in visions do too sometimes, right? Our vision of what we want, I think, changes, and that should be allowed.
Mm-hmm.
But I agree with that idea that like passion isn't everything. It makes me think of the idea that it's like motivation versus discipline, right? Like I'm not always motivated to go do something, but if I'm disciplined, I'm going to get that thing done. And so I see motivation and passion similar to like, whereas vision and discipline are similar too.
I see that. Yeah. Dalton talks about like discipline as it relates to leadership as well. And I know that one of his goals for a while was reading, he had these like 2 books, and his goal was to annotate and do all these things. And over time, he had like a couple chapters he wasn't feeling and he wasn't like passionate about, so to speak. I think it was personal finance, right, Dalton? Like one
It
of
actually was a book on the stock market. It was like how to invest, like the common sense invest, the little book of common sense investing is what it was.
Yeah. So you had to use discipline because like it wasn't the top passion, but it related to your vision, right?
Yes.
And part of your vision is like what again, if you don't mind sharing?
I want to be financially stable. So, and the thing is, it's funny because I read a book called Rich Dad Poor Dad, which had inspired me to research finance, because if you're not financially literate, you won't be able to accumulate wealth. And so then I stumbled upon the book, this little book of common sense investing. And I didn't like that book at all. I mean, there was some cool information in there. However, it was very repetitive and monotonous. And I didn't pull a lot from it. However, because of that grit and that discipline, I was able to push through the book and keep pursuing my financial literacy, which helped me get onto the book I'm now currently reading, which is Personal Finance Quick Start Guide, which is a great book. I've learned so much from it. And, you know, sometimes you just have to buckle down and drag your knuckles a little bit to get through the rough stuff so you can get to where you need to be and where you can be happy and successful.
Yeah. So thinking about that end destination, being financially stable and not having to worry about anything, like the feeling of being there is much stronger than the feeling of not wanting to do something. Like it's just chemistry. It's just feelings. Like, how do you want to feel? And then you connect with that feeling. That's what my coaches told me, you know, after working with a bunch of them and developing myself that way, which is one of the many ways you could do it. And that's what I picked up is vision. How do you want to feel?
Yeah.
David Goggins also talks about it. He's a big knuckle dragger, and it's helped him do a lot of incredible things, such as set a world record of over 4,000 pull-ups, run ultra marathons. So yeah, vision is very important and useful.
So it becomes, I think, as it relates to like students, it becomes less about what do you like to do, and it becomes more about what do you want.
Yeah, I think that that's really helpful at the high school level. I think at the middle school level, that it almost could be too abstract, but I don't know. Certainly young people have many ideas of what they want to do when they become an adult, and what things that they want and things that they don't want, right? I think maybe that's an interesting way to frame it, is what don't you want, you know? What kind of life do you not want? And then what can you do to avoid that? Yeah.
It's a good start for sure. I feel like at that level too, like in middle school, they could be more imaginative. So they could be, in a sense, easier to sell on that vision. Have it, you know, so that's one advantage, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. the kids write towards the end of their 8th grade year, they write a paper about they got $1 million and they have to spend it all. And there's certain things they have to spend it on. But one of them is their future. So they have to make a risky investment, a return investment. They have to put some money for their future, for like an education or something. And so that's when I start to see young people kind of like coming up with all these crazy ideas of what they're going to do for their future. And that's always fun.
Yeah. So something like that, I feel like is helpful.
Yeah.
But then like the trick is using that to help motivate them when it comes to the, mundane tasks or maybe some homework that they have to do.
Yeah.
Just kind of remind them like, hey, remember you wanted to do this and that's why you want to do it.
Yep.
Yeah, remembering your why is very important.
Yeah. Yeah, that idea of intrinsic motivation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus extrinsic.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk a lot about intrinsic motivation and growth mindset. That those are a couple like key phrases that we use. The growth mindset's the big one.
You use that with your students?
Yeah.
Right. What does that look like?
Well, in 6th grade examples, because we're talking about it right now, we're doing a unit on failure and successes, and what role failure has in being successful. And so an example of a growth mindset is they did poorly on their science test, and they know that they can study again and study this time with a teacher and retake the test and hopefully do better. But that growth mindset is like, I'm smart and I messed up on this and I'll do better next time, and I think keeping track of their work so they can see how it changes over time and pointing that out to them, that helps to really encourage that growth mindset. Be like, look how you've changed from this draft to this draft, and so we do a lot of reflection in our writing, because for me, it's really, really important that they can see how they have grown and how they have changed in small intervals.
It's funny that you mentioned tracking their progress, because I can't remember what book it was that I read about it that said top golfers in the country, in the world, top athletes are percentage points better than each other. Like the number 1 athlete or golfer in the world is percentage points better than the number 2 athlete, and she gets paid millions of dollars more.
Yeah.
And the reason why he's able to be that much better is because she tracks their progress.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's that looking at seeing where you've come, and then that kind of helps to direct you where you're going, and I do that in the weight room. So I'll like mark down what I got this week and then hope for better next week, and it feels good when you surpass, last week's PR. And I think I also, I can tell my young people they get excited when they see the growth they've made. It's really neat.
Even if it's a smaller goal.
Yeah. I mean, if they struggled with topic sentences a week ago and they wrote the best topic sentence they've ever written, and we can talk about it, that's like they leave my class knowing that they did something really cool. Like they grew and they have this skill in their toolbox, mm-hmm. and they can use it in other classes, and they can use it in my class next week, or the week after, whenever they need to again.
It's amazing. Yeah, there are many takeaways. I mean, so far there has been like, one is knowing what you want and why you want it. 2 is setting small goals and achieving them. 3 is celebrating these goals I think there was one more. Um, oh, expose yourself to more experience or
Yeah.
experience. That was big. That's awesome. I mean, you can do a lot with these tools, like right there. Um, what would you recommend like students never do in terms of their education?
I don't know. I think it's tricky to speak in absolutes. Don't drop out.
Drop out.
I know these are probably, that's not your group of students, but golly, just get a high school diploma, please. Um, I guess never underestimate yourself. Um, God, you're capable of so much, and there's the whole world in front of you, and it's only going to get better. There's, I know personally, I struggled in middle and high school, and I didn't see. There was a time when I wasn't quite sure about like what my future looked like, and it just gets so much better.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like that. It goes back to the growth mindset
Yeah.
because if you never underestimate yourself, you're almost guaranteed to grow because you're opening the door for yourself to do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alexis, one of the things you said for your students never to do is drop out. And a sophomore in high school that I know was telling me how part of his plan was to, when he comes of age, drop out of high school and just pursue working. And I want to know how you feel about that, what you think about that, and why you would recommend that students don't drop out of high school.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always exceptions to the rule, right? I know a couple folks who dropped out and are incredibly successful. And so I guess that there's always exceptions to the rule, but I think for the most of the time, it is really, really difficult to get a job if you don't have a high school diploma. If you're the type of person who is motivated and driven and you know what you want to do and you're dropping out because you have this vision, right? Who am I to tell you no, I guess? But I think the majority of people don't have that vision, and they want to drop out because they're struggling, or they want to drop out because they don't want to do the work, or they don't see how it's going to be helpful.
Mhm.
And it is helpful, and it does make a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to see the delayed gratification that graduating high school comes with.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can look at statistics that the pay difference alone in people who have graduated high school versus people who have not is astronomical. And I don't have those numbers off the top of my head, but it is a massive gap in pay. And that continues to widen the more education you get. And certainly we know that a lot of people can put themselves in a really bad spot with college debt. But if you can further education for less money, if it's applicable to the career you want to go into, then I encourage everyone to do that. But I guess, Dalton, to that sophomore, I would ask, is their vision really that strong? And is it feasible? Right? Like if they want to drop out because they want to be a Twitch gamer and make all their money on Twitch, is that viable in the long run? And
Well, I'll tell you right now that his plan is he wants to drop out so he can make money. Like that's what his focus is on. And I was trying to tell him that you have the rest of your life to work.
Yeah.
I would say, is he in a tough spot financially? Is his family in a tough spot? And is there ways that he can get help? And obviously I don't know this young person's situation, but what are you going to do with all that money? And how high can you really go without a high school diploma?
Mhm. Yeah, you would make more if you just stick with it, graduate. But yeah, I feel like it could be an escape from, it's definitely an escape from something. It's either like fear of work, like whether it's at school, or like you said, there might be like personal problems he's trying to escape by working more hours.
Mm.
But whatever the case might be, I guess the takeaway is like seek help, clarify why you want to do what you want to do, and have a plan for it.
Yeah, get that why figured out.
Yeah, I think we covered a lot here. I appreciate you for hopping on this, call and spending your time with us to help others. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I think this podcast is great, and I hope it reaches a lot of young people. I listened to a couple of your past podcasts, and I thought they were great, and I love the idea.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Alexis. And with that, we thank you guys for coming to the podcast today and checking it out. We hope that you've grabbed something that you can use in your life to get better and to achieve success. And we'll see you in the next one.